What if the true structure of the world was not held together by the gods on Olympus, but by those who were never meant to sit among them? Not the ones crowned in light, not the ones celebrated in temples, not the ones whose names echo through grand myths of victory and power, but the ones who exist in the quiet mechanisms of reality itself, unseen, uncelebrated, yet absolutely essential. Because while Olympus represents authority, order, and visibility, the foundations beneath it are sustained by something far less comforting. Forces that do not seek attention, do not demand devotion, and do not offer reassurance. Among these is Hecate, a figure who does not rule from above but stands at the intersections of choice, at the precise moments where certainty dissolves into possibility. She governs not outcomes, but transitions, existing in the fragile space between what is known and what has yet to be decided. In a world where the Olympian gods represent control, Hecate represents the absence of it, the moment in which every direction remains open and every consequence remains unknown. This position does not grant her glory, because it does not provide clarity. Instead, it places her at the center of uncertainty, a force that is necessary for change, yet inherently unsettling to those who seek stability. Humans rarely build devotion around uncertainty, not because it lacks power, but because it resists understanding, and in resisting understanding, it resists comfort. Deeper still lies Nyx, a presence so ancient that even the hierarchy of Olympus does not fully contain her. Unlike the gods who wield defined domains, Nyx is not a ruler of night. She is night itself, a primordial condition that exists beyond governance. What is most revealing about her is not what she does, but what others refuse to do, particularly Zeus, who, despite his authority, avoids direct conflict with her. This is not fear in the conventional sense, but recognition, an understanding that certain forces are too fundamental to oppose because they are woven into the fabric of existence. Night cannot be conquered. It can only be endured, and its return is not a failure of light, but a requirement for balance. Without darkness, there is no rest, no pause, no boundary that allows life to recover from its own intensity. Nyx does not disrupt the world. She prevents it from collapsing under the weight of its own continuity. Within that darkness operates another figure, one whose presence is perhaps the most misunderstood precisely because it is inevitable, Thanatos. Unlike the violent or chaotic forms of death that often dominate human imagination, Thanatos represents a quiet conclusion, a transition that does not arrive with spectacle but with certainty. He does not conquer, he does not judge, and he does not act with intention beyond completion. Yet despite this, or perhaps because of it, he is rarely honored. Human cultures construct rituals to delay him, myths to escape him, and narratives to challenge him, not because he is cruel, but because he represents a limit that cannot be negotiated. However, without that limit, existence itself loses coherence, as continuity without end transforms from possibility into burden. Death, in this sense, is not the opposite of life, but the condition that gives life structure, ensuring that beginnings and endings retain meaning. When considered together, these figures reveal a pattern that stands in contrast to the more visible gods of Olympus. Hecate governs uncertainty, Nyx governs rest, and Thanatos governs conclusion, each representing a boundary that defines human experience. These are not forces of dominance, but of limitation, and it is precisely these limitations that allow existence to remain sustainable. Yet these are also the forces that humans resist most strongly, because they impose conditions that cannot be controlled or avoided. Uncertainty demands acceptance, darkness demands stillness, and death demands finality, each challenging the desire for permanence, clarity, and power. This contrast helps explain why human devotion tends to favor gods of light, victory, and control, while marginalizing those associated with ambiguity, silence, and endings. The former offer narratives of agency, progress, and triumph. aligning with the human tendency to seek meaning through achievement and expansion. The latter, however, introduce constraints that disrupt those narratives, forcing recognition of limits that cannot be overcome. In this sense, the so-called minor deities are not lesser in power, but different in function, operating in domains that are foundational rather than aspirational. Ultimately, the world of mythology suggests that existence is not sustained by what is most visible, but by what is most constant. The quiet forces that shape boundaries, enforce pauses, and define endings are not celebrated because they do not align with the stories humans prefer to tell about themselves. Yet without them, those stories could not exist at all. Olympus may stand at the center of myth, but it is not the entirety of it, and the stability it represents depends on forces that remain, by their very nature, in the shadows.